Welcome to the first grade online content webcast. This webcast is intended to provide teachers and those who support them in the classroom with background information on George Washington Carver as a foundation for the Georgia Standards of Excellence. In kindergarten, students were introduced to U.S. history through a study of American holidays and symbols. Basic concepts of geography and economics were presented, and civics was introduced through rules and good character traits. First grade students will continue their introduction to United States history through the study of selected historical figures. Students will learn about the important contributions they made. They will also learn about where and when these figures lived, and the positive character traits each person displayed. The concept of patriotism will also be explored. In the standards shown, you will notice the words read about, describe, and identify. These words specify exactly what students need to know, understand, and be able to do. In Element A of the History Standard SS1H1, students will identify the contributions made by each historical figure. Specific focuses are given for each person. In Element B, students will describe how the everyday life of these historical figures is similar to and different from present everyday life. This includes similarities and differences in food, clothing, homes, transportation, communication, and recreation. In the first Geography Standard SS1 G1, students will describe how each historical figure was influenced by his or her time and place. The primary sources and the literature connections presented in the upcoming slides may also be used to illustrate how the time period and place in which the person lived impacted their lives. In the first Civic Standard SS1 CG1, students will describe how each historical figure displayed positive character traits. The literature connections presented may also be used to prompt discussions about which character traits each person exhibited and how to cite text evidence to support students' thinking. Teachers will observe students' understanding of these standards as they are encouraged to orally respond to primary sources and read-alouds. Likewise, students might also respond in writing. Both of these types of responses nicely tie in with first grade standards for reading informational text, as well as research writing and presentations. Examples of primary sources are incorporated into this webcast. This slide shows one example of a way to analyze a primary source. Half the story is a strategy that provides another opportunity for students to interpret information by expressing what they see, know, and wonder about the content being covered. The activity begins with students viewing a small portion of the image. The students are then asked to predict what the topic of study will be based on what they see of the image. As the teacher shows different portions of the image, the students can confirm their prediction or change it. If available, an interactive whiteboard has a magnifying tool that makes this process easier. The half the story instructional strategy is an excellent springboard for discussion, encouraging students to begin processing and making connections as a foundation for new learning. This webcast will focus on the history, geography, and civic standards related to George Washington Carver. Students will study the important contributions Carver made to science, how living in the southern U.S. in the 1900s influenced him, and the positive character traits he exhibited, such as perseverance and commitment. The learning target is, I can tell about George Washington Carver and his contributions to science. George Washington Carver was the son of a slave owned by the Carver family. Like Theodore Roosevelt, he loved plants and animals. He also enjoyed drawing and reading. Being an avid learner, George wanted to go to school, but had to search hard for a school that accepted African American students. He obtained a degree in botany at Iowa State and became known as an expert in the field. As the head of the agricultural department at Tuskegee Institute, his research in crop rotation brought about innovations for the farming industry, particularly for the South. Nicknamed the Plant Doctor, Carver is widely known for finding hundreds of uses for nutrient-rich plants such as soybeans, pecans, sweet potatoes, and peanuts. It is important to incorporate first grade math skills and information skills when teaching the standards. In first grade, students should master using a compass rose to identify cardinal directions and be introduced to intermediate directions. In doing so, teachers can also tie in standards G2 and G3 when discussing and identifying their location, as well as other continents, oceans, and landforms. When reading, viewing, or listening to information, first grade students should be introduced to the following skills: distinguishing between fact and opinion, identifying the main idea, details, sequence of events, and cause and effect, identifying and using primary and secondary sources, and interpreting timelines. Another learning target for students is I can tell about George Washington Carver's positive character traits. The image on the left shows the first Jessup wagon in front of the Carver family home. Carver wanted to take his agricultural teaching to the people, so he built a movable school which carried a nurse, a home demonstration agent, an agricultural agent, and an architect to share the latest techniques with rural people. This effort showed Carver's commitment to helping the community. The image on the right shows the wagon after the development of the automobile. Carver was able to bring new tools and crops to farmers who could not travel to Tuskegee for instruction. Carver showed perseverance because he did not let the obstacle of distance get in his way of reaching all farmers. Another learning target for students is I can tell about George Washington Carver's life in the southern states in the early 1900s. The image on the left shows the students' experimental station at Tuskegee Institute in Alabama. Research was conducted there to aid agriculture and to help solve its problems. Farm products were also produced and sold to help support the institute. The image on the right shows a history class at Tuskegee in 1902. Tuskegee was originally a school for training African American teachers and later added training in farming and other typical trades of the rural South. The books shown on this slide are suggestions for interactive read-alouds. These specific titles are not necessary in order to teach these standards, but are an option if they're available in your system. Other book companies may offer books that support the same content information for this grade level. As well as delivering content that addresses the social studies standards, read-alouds also offer opportunities to develop comprehension skills and enhance vocabulary. This concludes the first grade online content webcast on George Washington Carver.